Greetings, everyone. I am Iwan Nomran from It Pays to Fear God. In this channel, we learn about God, His beloved Son, Jesus Christ, and their kingdom purpose, the three most important subjects that we can ever learn about, talk about, or discuss in the entire Holy Bible if we read John chapter 17, verse 3. This video is dedicated to discussing a very exciting subject, and that subject is captioned, "Make us gods, which shall go before us." However, I'm not going to get into that subject without me first of all playing a tune that some of us might enjoy. The subject that I'm going to be discussing today is captioned, "Make us gods, which shall go before us." This statement is drawn from Exodus chapter 32, verse 1. "Make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him." Ever since humanity had sinned, Genesis chapter 3 from verses 1 to 6, humanity has been in a continuous struggle to solve problems for themselves. And ultimately, this video is going to be answering three questions. Number one, who gets sovereignty? And number two, who has the right to solve humanity's problems in this world? Is it God? After all, I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their hosts have I commanded. Isaiah chapter 45, verse 12. Or is it humanity? And thirdly, who, in the end, should take the credit? Let's head back to the story. In Exodus chapter 32, the Israelites came to Aaron after they'd spent a while waiting for Moses and were getting worried, and they told him, "Make us gods, which shall go before us." Now, obviously, they were doing so because they needed supreme kind of protection to continue moving them forward, because it was that kind of protection that got them started. So that was why they were making gods. And they came to Aaron because he had experience with doing such stuff. And then Aaron made it. And then if you read Exodus chapter 32 verse 4, this is like the tipping point of the whole story. Because after he made the gods, presented it before them, he said, "These are the gods which brought thee out of the land of Egypt." And I'm going to explain later why that was a very horrible thing that had just happened. But after that, they worshipped it. Aaron built an altar. They were playing all kinds of drums. It was celebration like never before. They were so happy that this had just occurred. And God, obviously, who sees everything, if you read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13, and Psalms chapter 11, verse 4, had told Moses or informed him, the Israelites have corrupted themselves. They've created a statue or an idol, and they're worshiping it, going against my commandment in Exodus chapter 20, from verses 3 to 6. So then he told him, you have to go back and visit them and stuff. And when Moses did, he felt just as disgusted as God himself was. What was so bad in what they did? Starting off with, they were denouncing or denying God's influence on them. Because remember, God was the one who rescued them from the Egyptians. "You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and now I bear you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself." Exodus chapter 19, verse 4. And God expected them to obey the next part, which is verse 5. "Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine." He was essentially just asking for them to be grateful, worship him, celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles and stuff. And of course, prior to that experience, they were doing so. It's just that they corrupted themselves and denied God by not only creating a God, but even claiming, of course, with Aaron, that these are the gods that made you able to leave the land of Egypt. all the effort that God had put in, all his feelings, his emotions. It was a very special night. If we read Exodus chapter 12 verse 42, the Israelites were essentially saying, nope, God didn't do any of that. It's us. Because remember, they created the idols. It was their own earrings. They contributed to that. And it was us that delivered ourselves from the land of Egypt. They also dishonored themselves, in the sense that because they decided to worship those idols, they were like the Egyptians that they had left. Remember, God destroyed those gods. He proved them worthless. But the Israelites put themselves to the level of those Egyptians by worshiping gods that they created with their own hands. And we can't understand this without reading St. Paul's statements in Romans chapter 1 in verses 18 and 23, where it stated, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of man, who holds the truth in unrighteousness, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things." Then they showed a lack of belief and trust. And this is also very important. Because they rejected God, if we read 1 Samuel chapter 8 verse 8, they took laws into their own hands. They said, now, we're not going to consult God, because remember, it was God who had led Moses to the mountain and stuff, and who had led the Israelites as a whole out of Egypt. So they should have went to God and said, God, this is an issue. We are getting worried. We do not know where our leader is. And God would have maybe brought him, that is Moses, so that they would be comforted and they wouldn't worry. But no, they took laws into their own hands and said, okay, this is an issue, and let's just deal with it by creating new gods which will represent us to go into the land of Canaan. Eventually, they changed their glory for that which doth not profit. If we read that in Jeremiah chapter 2 verse 11. And if we read Psalms chapter 106 verse 20, David the psalmist had stated, "Thus they changed their glory into the similitude of an ox that eateth grass." It's the same idea. However, is this story peculiar? No, because there were other examples of people, individuals in the Bible, who did similar stuff, taking laws into their own hands. For example, in 1 Samuel chapter 13, from verses 1 to 14, King Saul had a problem because Samuel was not arriving early enough to come and make the offering as sort of prayer to go to war and stuff and succeed. So Saul was getting impatient, and he said, okay, let's not consult God. Let me just make the peace offering myself, and maybe it'll just work out. Yes, he was trying his luck indeed by doing that, and it failed because Samuel immediately came and rebuked him essentially and promised him that David would replace him, and future history would explain how that happened. If we read the story of King Jeroboam in 1 Kings chapter 12 from verses 26 to 33, we see the same idea. God, through a prophet, had given him the 10 tribes of Israel because Solomon had misbehaved and stuff. But when he was realizing that people were still going to Jerusalem and stuff like that, which obviously wasn't in his land, instead of consulting God saying, look, people are leaving my kingdom and are strengthening themselves in Judah, so if it's your will that I should bring them back to my land, I will go ahead and do so. But instead, he did something even worse than most people would have imagined. He not only made sure that they remained in his land and did not go to strengthen Rehoboam's land, of course, which is Judah, he even created false religion to keep people in his land. And of course, coincidentally, he happened to build cows, which were very similar to what happened in Exodus chapter 32. And if you look at the story of the Israelites once again in 1 Samuel chapter 8, from verses 1 to 8, after they had spent some time watching judges mess themselves up with all kinds of coups and stupid wars and stuff like that, they didn't want to live their lives in that kind of mess any longer. So instead of consulting God, they just consulted themselves. We need a king because this kind of nonsense is not happening in our surrounding Gentile nations. So we need to be just like them. If we read 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verses 19 and 20. And God did not find that funny or cool. If we read that Hosea chapter 13 verse 11. The constitution in this world, the people's government, democracy, stuff in that category, is kind of like the gods that were there, because once the monarchies, the autocracies, the dictatorships, and all other stuff in that direction were defeated, both with world wars and prior revolutions, the French Revolution, and revolutions in other countries too, people had gotten so fed up with those kinds of ways, people saying they came from God, that they don't care what happened. They just couldn't imagine humanity still being under those stuff. And I explained some of this in my video, Let My People Go, and you can check that out for how God did all of those things. But the idea was that they didn't want such a situation anymore. So they created their own set of laws and governments that would keep them forward. Instead of consulting God saying, okay, you've delivered us, you fulfilled the Lord's prayer, thy kingdom come, that you'll set up your kingdom. If we read Matthew chapter 6 and verses 9 and 10, and take God's opinion and live their lives accordingly. Instead, they created their own idea, ways that would lead them to success, to peace. And of course, he isn't just going to be looking at humanity doing that and say, okay, go ahead, ruin your lives and stuff like that. No, he is going to be testing them, and he is testing the Constitution, the government, stuff like that. What we've created to serve ourselves, to worship essentially. He's testing that, similar to what he did in the time of Pharaoh and Moses in Exodus chapter 7 to 12. Give them plagues and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that they're going to be physical, but it's generally stuff that will push the government to the limit. And God is eventually going to prove to humanity that when we try to solve our own problems, it never works. And if we read Exodus chapter 9 verse 14, God himself summarized everything that I have just said. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou mayest know that there is none like me in all the earth. Because there are powerful angels in heaven. If we read Revelation chapter 11 verse 6, which have the power to test the extreme governments in this world and prove them to be worthless without God's own intervention. And if we read that Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 11, Jeremiah the prophet had prophesied the fact that these gods that we're worshiping in our time, which are once again not physical, they're that idea of laws that are serving the people and stuff like that, are not going to last forever, but are going to leave the earth eventually. Thus shall you say unto them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth, even they shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens. However, if we do not want to be like such ones who take laws into their own hands and fail, well, how do we exactly do that? How do we be different or unique from such people? We should trust God that he, being our creator, has the best solution and say in our peace in this world. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. Proverbs chapter 3 from verses 5 to 7. We have to acknowledge that what Jesus Christ said in John chapter 15 verse 5 is true. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. We have to believe in that statement. And in Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 23, O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. Because remember, God, even though seeing us corrupt ourselves to nothing, dishonor ourselves, if we read Romans chapter 1 verse 24, because he's a loving parent, he's still trying to salvage us in the sense of rework us to be the people that we will eventually want to be, because we want peace. It's just that we do not know how to get there, even though of course many of us pretend that we do with all the inventions and the institutions and stuff that we are creating. It will not lead to fulfilling such goals, and we can already start seeing some of those things already. But when we trust in God, then he can rule us properly. He will not forget us, will have compassion on us at all times. Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet I will not forget thee. Isaiah chapter 49 verse 15. We saw some of that with the ransom sacrifice. We never asked God for it. We never prayed to him for it. We never even wished it, but he still gave it to us. And this was manifested the love of God toward us, because that God sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live in him. Herein is love. Not that we loved God, but that God loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation of our sins. We can also understand this with the parable of the prodigal son. If read Luke chapter 15 from verses 11 to 32. The prodigal son was proud. He wanted to show his father that I want to see the world. I want to do my own thing. But it came to no avail, because he squandered the money ruthlessly and stuff, and he came back to his father poor, empty, and most importantly, ashamed of himself. But the father was still loving, and that father, keep that in mind, is God Almighty himself. And that is where I think I can stop on discussing the subject, make us gods which shall go before us. To conclude this entertaining episode, we are once again going to hear a nice tune that some of us might enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified when we make future videos just like this. And if you learned something new today, share it in the comments. We're very enthusiastic to hear it. And something very cool is that when we trust God and not the world, God will exalt us to a point that humanity themselves can't achieve. If read Isaiah chapter 57 verse 15, Isaiah the son of Amos had stated, For thus saith the high and lofty one, that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place, with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. Have a good day, everyone.